Hello, and welcome back to another edition of Unreal Engine 5 Study Hall. This is Ben Blau, and today we're going to be having a look at how to create open world style landscapes here in Unreal Engine 5. Usually, when I get started, I like to max out all the graphics settings just so that I can see what is affecting performance the most as we do something on this scale. So under settings, I've got my engine scalability settings set to cinematic for every category, and the material level is set. I'm setting it right now to epic. Okay, that's the highest. And our lighting quality. Oops, my meeting controls are right over that. Let me move those out of the way. Let's look at our lighting quality. It probably is going to default to preview, but I've already switched mine to production. Okay. Also, before I started filming, I switched out the default character. When you load the third person template, it's Quinn by default, but I just switched out the character to something that I thought would be more appropriate for the type of environment that we're going to be creating. I have what I have in mind is just like a sprawling open world, sort of medieval magical fantasy land. And Quinn would just look like kind of, I think, inappropriate in that sort of environment. Plus, I really like this character a lot. Okay. If you want this one, it's on the marketplace and it's called Furry S2, Furry, I think, Furry S2. Okay. So you can get that on the marketplace. All right. I should also divulge that I've downloaded some assets that I'll be making use of as we create our world. So we'll look at those later. So let's zoom out. Start here. And you might as well do this now. There are things that we're not going to want or need in this level. So let's start by just deleting all of this geometry. Don't delete any of the lights or the post-process volume, okay? Just the meshes that are in this scene. You can do this from the outliner or just by clicking on them right here in the viewport and hitting delete. Because we don't need any of this stuff for our open world. Okay. Just a couple pieces left. Get rid of the text render and leave the player start, but I recommend moving it up a little bit because when we create our landscape, I don't want it to spawn our character underground. Okay, so I'm preempting that. That often will happen because the coordinates of the arena compared to the coordinates of the landscape will usually result in this spawning underground. So we don't want to do that. So we'll just bring this up arbitrarily for now, and then we'll snap it to the ground once the landscape is created. Now, speaking of the landscape, this landscape is going to have certain features. It's going to, have different layers, is what they're referred to as. Because if we look at the planet, we see certain areas that are made of rock and certain areas that are made of soil where vegetation might be growing. And then there's man-made materials like roads and things of that nature, and debris, snow, dried leaves, all sorts of things can occupy a landscape. So ours has to be able to have different layers, and that requires the creation of a landscape material or a layered landscape material. So let me bring up my content browser here, and I'm going to right click and make a new folder, and we'll call it Our Landscape. Oops, again, my meeting controls are sitting on top of it. I want to make sure I'm spelling this correctly. Oh, what's happening? Our Landscape. Rename. Our Landscape. Thank you. Okay, Our Landscape. And inside there is where we're going to create the material. So right click, choose material, and I'll name this MAT underscore. What just happened? This is trying to open up a Blender. Okay, I don't know how that happened. Okay, so Let's rename that. I don't know. I don't know why that happened. Why Blender just opened. That makes no sense. I'm going to call this MAT underscore our landscape. Okay, sorry for the distraction, and I don't think Blender is running. Let me just make sure. Okay, so we're in good shape. Um, just we'll just get that ready, and we also want to before we make this, we want to set up some optimization features here, and they are going to be having to do with this thing here that's called world partition. This is the new optimization system for streaming, basically level streaming. You'll see when we create our landscape, it's going to be based on a grid system where actors in each one of the grid cells, they dynamically stream in and out of memory based on the player's proximity to them. So if you don't see your world partition tab, if it looks like this, just go to your window menu and find it, okay? World partition, and it's this option you're looking for, world partition editor, which should dock itself right there in the default layout. We'll also want to be looking at our world settings, okay? And that is not displayed by default, so we'll check that. And now we've got these three tabs. Details, that's the regular details panel for everybody that's in the world. And this is empty right now, but it will show us some information as soon as we start creating our landscape. And then we have some things that we will have to adjust in the world settings here in order to enable the world partition to function properly. So to get this ready, what we'll do first here in world settings is I'm going to search for the word streaming and enable streaming. So we'll do that and just say yes and okay. That's good. And that's really all we have to do in the world settings for now. So just clear your search and go back to the details panel. Next, I'm going to confirm some things in the edit menu. There is a plugin that's associated with this, although it is probably already enabled by default. So search for world partition and the HLOD utilities. That's hierarchical level of detail utilities. This is another feature that works with the world partition. Make sure that that's checked. And if it is checked, that's great. Just close this window. If it's not checked and you are just checking it for the first time, it's probably going to prompt you to restart your editor. But don't do that yet, okay? Because we're going to have to restart it anyway after some other modifications that we make here. So just check that and close this, but don't restart the editor yet, okay? Because the next thing is we're going to go into our project settings. And we're going to search for world partition. And is world partitioned? That now has to be set to true or check the checkbox, okay? And you can close that. All right, so let me see here. We've got our world settings and streaming was enabled. This is now starting to show cells. And we'll see a lot more of these once we have a landscape. And it seems like everything's ready. So what I will do is I'm going to save all and exit Unreal and restart. And I will join you back here after I've done all of those things because they're time consuming. Okay, so I'll press pause and I'll be right back. Okay, so I've saved and I've quit and now I'm reloading the level. Okay, and here we are back again. So, oh, you know what? I don't think that this is the level that I want to be in. Excuse me. So let's go back to our maps. I saved the map in third-person maps as landscape 02, I'm pretty sure, right? So, or not. No, it's this map, the third-person map. Okay, beg your pardon. That was a little faux pas. And it should look like this, just like it looked before. And let me get rid of my content drawer. All right, so we should be all set and set up to use our world partition. Let's now switch modes. We're going to go into our modes selector and go into landscape mode. And we are going to create a new landscape in a moment. But before we do, we want to make sure that we enable the edit layers. Okay. And maybe we'll look at doubling the area, increase my camera speed because now we have a much larger scale we're dealing with here. This is 8 by 8 components. Why don't we try 16 by 16 just to make this bigger? Okay. And yeah, so we'll have that. I'm not going to finish creating this yet because I realize now that we haven't finished making our landscape materials. So let me get my landscape material editor open and we'll finish that up. Okay. So here we see the material attributes node. You know what I'm going to do just preemptively here, I think, is that I'm going to disable auto saving because that'll be disruptive here. So let's go to, oops, not plugins. We're going to go to project settings and saving and loading. Or is that under editor preferences? I bet it's under, yeah, saving and loading. Where is that? Not in. Where is it? Okay, well, I can't find it for some reason. Loading and saving. It was staring me in the face right there. Okay, so let's see. Autosave. Enable autosave. I'm going to turn that off. And I just wasted probably as much time looking for it as it would have wasted on its own. But that's all right. So we're going to need to set this up with our landscape layers now. And we're going to start with 4 texture samples. So I'll search for texture sample. And we're going to be making use mostly of our texture samples that are in starter content. But of course, you've got the world at your fingertips with Quixel Bridge. You can get much higher resolution, better textures than these. But I want to show you just how much you can do using what just comes for free in your starter content folder. So we're going to have 4 layers. So once I've got this node, I can duplicate it with Control D or by copying and pasting, whichever you prefer. And we're going to populate each one of these with a different texture sample. So with this first one selected, I'm going to choose what I think should be the base layer of our planet. And I'm going to use the basalt diffuse map. Okay, the letter D is for diffuse map. That is the basic photograph that defines the appearance of this texture. And below that is the normal map texture. We're going to be using the normal maps as well so that light can interact with these in such a way that it creates a slightly more 3D appearing result. These are technically flat, non-tessellated textures, but the normal map helps to give it a more 3D appearance. So let's get our basic texture first for our basalt layer. And then this is going to be something that vegetation can grow on. So I think I'm going to go with the starter content moss. Yep, you can see the path there, right? Path is at the top, game starter content textures. There are 2 mosses here. This one says engine starter content textures, and I don't want that one. I want this one, okay? So we'll use that moss texture. For this, I imagine that we're going to have snow in this level as well because I want there to be mountains with like snow maybe at the top of them. So I have to admit that the snow texture that I'm using, if we go into starter content, there really isn't snow. If we look in our texture samples, there's just nothing that is snow. Okay, so I went to Quixel Bridge, all right? And that's as easy as right-clicking in an empty area of your content browser and choosing Add Quixel Content. And that will load Quixel Bridge in a separate tab if you've set it up to do so. And you can search, snow, for example. And if you log in, especially, oh no, I am logged in. Okay. You can see if there's something with a checkbox, that way you know that it's something you've already downloaded. So apparently I've used this one before. I happen to know that I did because I downloaded it just before I started filming today. But I'll click on that and make sure that this is set to highest quality. Now, if you're bringing in a mesh, always check here and see if it says nanite. If it says nanite, definitely choose that. But for materials, right now we just want highest quality. And this may prompt you to download it if it doesn't already say downloaded. And once it does, you click add. Now, I'm not going to click add right now because I've already done it, right? If I look here, I've got in my assets that I've downloaded, I've got, let's see, Megascans, surfaces, and I've got my snow material right here, okay? So let's do this. Let's take the fresh, it's a material instance. This is the basic diffuse map. I'm going to select that, go back to our landscape, and I'm going to use just the use selected asset from content browser button to put that in there. And there's going to be our Quixel snow. And these other textures, I mean, if they came from Quixel Megascans as well, they'd be super, super high 8K quality. You know, it's amazing. But they're still going to look good, okay, by the time we're finished. And I also want a layer for cobblestone, and I can search for that. Cobblestone. And there's a rough cobblestone that I like. I want the diffuse map for that. Okay. So these are the 4 main texture types that I plan to use as my 4 layers. Now to blend them, we need a landscape layer blend node. So we'll right click and type landscape layer until we see the landscape layer blend node. And there it is. We need to add array elements to this for each one of these textures. So 1, 2, 3, 4. You can see it's updated the node as well. And we have disclosure triangles for each index of this array. So let's twirl down the first one and name the layer according to what it's supposed to represent. So I'll call this layer rock. And for now, I'm going to set the preview weight to 0.25, and I'll tell you why that is later. Actually, I didn't need to do that even at all because of a certain bug that still exists, but this is good practice. Leave this set to LB weight blend, and we're done in index 0. Now in index 1, we're going to call this grass, I guess. And we'll set the preview weight to 0.25. Twirl that back up. Index 2, that's going to be our snow layer. Preview weight of 0.25. And then finally, cobblestone. Preview weight 0.25. Okay, so all of the layers on the layer blend node have now been updated by name, and I can connect the RGB out of each texture sample to the appropriate input on the layer blend, like so. And then the output of that is our base color, okay? We are now going to want all of these nodes, except for the attributes node, we want all of these nodes again for the purpose of having our normal maps. So we'll simply highlight them all, copy, Command-C or Control-C, and then just click somewhere below in the graph to paste them, okay? And put them wherever you find it to be most convenient. Getting the normal maps for each one of these textures is going to be easy because when we select the texture sample and open up the menu, the normal map is going to be right next to the diffuse map that we used. So _n stands for normal map, and it has the same name, right? So there's that normal map. Now we're going to get the normal map for the moss, which is right here, T ground moss _n. Want to make sure we use the normal map that is absolutely correct. Otherwise, the light will not work with the base texture correctly or accurately. So we'll go for the snow normal map, 8K snow. Boy, that snow is going to look good, I think. So we'll get the normal map for that. And we'll get the normal map for our cobblestone, rough normal map. And then the output of this layer blend node is going to go into the normal input of the material attributes. Okay. Now I need to work with some constant one information. Now you can do that by searching for constants. And you can see that I can get like a single constant, which is a float, and then different types of vectors and so forth. So if I just want a single value constant, I can hold down the number 1 on the numeric key, not the numeric, the alphanumeric, the letters side of your keyboard, not the numeric keypad, but the normal side of your keyboard. Hold down 1 and left click, and I'll just get a constant 1 vector, so to speak. If I held down a 2, I would get a constant 2. These are shortcuts. Guess what I did there? I held down 3. Guess what I did there? I held down 4. Okay, so let's just delete those. We don't need them. We're going to use this one plugged into both the metallic and specular. Okay, and I want that to be set to 0 or something close to 0 because I don't want like a super shiny, like glistening looking landscape. So maybe I can set it to point, I don't know, point what? 0.05? Maybe, okay? Maybe. I'll probably regret that and reset it to 0 later. And roughness, I think I want that set 100% rough, okay? So we'll do another constant, plug it into roughness. And this time I'm going to set the value all the way to 1, so our rough materials reflect light as if they are rough materials. I haven't really made up my mind as to whether I want to set up the tiling in here yet or wait for later, okay? Actually, I think what I'll do is maybe I will do it now just so that I can show you the effect of this. What we need to use is something called a landscape chords node. Landscape chords. Oops. Or let me just type chords. Landscape layer chords, beg your pardon. I thought that's what I said, but I guess maybe I didn't. And this first one is, we can name it, okay? This is going to be rock tiling. And that's going to get connected to the UVs of the texture sample. And I'm going to need more of these, so I can duplicate this. Okay, 1 for each texture. This one will be grass tiling. This one will be snow tiling. And this one will be cobblestone tiling. Like that. Each one of these is going to go into the UVs of its corresponding texture, but also into the UVs for the normal maps, okay? So for our rock tiling, that's going to go also into the normal map for our rock layer, into the UVs, okay? The same thing for all of the other layers. So this landscape chords for grass will go into the UVs for our grass layer, normal map, and for our snow, and for our cobblestone. Okay. And I'm not going to set the mapping scale just yet, okay? Because we can come back and adjust that afterwards, okay? So let's hit apply and let it do its thing and save that. And now our landscape material is ready. Okay, so I got ahead of myself. You really want to make your landscape material prior to going through the create landscape process. So I can close this tab, and I still haven't created the landscape, but we're still in landscape mode. And remember, all we did is we set this from 8 by 8 to 16 by 16 just to make it a larger landscape. But I want to assign the landscape material that I just created, so we can search for it, or we could just have it highlighted from the content browser. So let's go get it from our content browser, content, our landscape. Just simply select it there by single clicking, and then use selected asset from content browser. I can just pop it in there. Okay, now our material is going to be used. And you want to make sure, again, enable edit layers. You really want to make sure that that is checked. Okay, otherwise this is not going to work properly. And finally, once we have all that set up, we will hit create and let it do its thing. Good. Now, this does not look like anything yet, and that is understandable because we have to create some additional assets now called layer info assets. And we also have to create different edit layers. So we have a base layer that I don't like to really use for anything. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to create a new layer on top of that. And I'll rename it height map, like that. This is where I'm going to be doing the topological features of my landscape sculpting, like making mountains and hills and things. And maybe what I'll do as well is I'll make additional layers for every different type of paint. Okay, so let's create another layer, and I'll rename it rock layer. Keep doing this, and that is in regard to just painting things with the rock texture. Okay, oops, didn't mean to turn that off. Create another layer. This is going to be renamed snow layer. Oh no, grass layer. Excuse me. Rock layer, grass layer. I'm thinking vertically here from bottom to top. And then the highest thing is going to be snow, like on the tops of the mountains. So we'll create one more layer and we'll rename it snow. Okay. Now, the way that we are going to create the layer assets, the layer info assets, is pretty easy. Here in the landscape editor, go to paint mode for a moment and scroll down to where you can see the paint layers. And you can see that they say none, 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 none in these little drop downs. It's here where you have to assign your layer infos, but we don't have those assets yet. So we're going to create them right now, and that could not be easier, because all you have to do is select one of your paint layers and hit the plus button. You can see it says create layer info, and you want to use weight blended layer normal, and you'll see that it creates it for you. It even names it according to what your layer was named. Okay, so this is the rock layer info asset, and it puts it into a folder in your maps directory, third person map underscore shader assets. So we'll save that one, and that's it. Okay, and we're going to do this though for each one of these paint layers. Okay, so let me hide my content drawer. We're going to go to grass, weight blended, save, snow, save. We don't have to do anything other than, obviously save these after they're all created. And finally for cobblestone, save. Okay, so let's shift click to select those all and Control or Command S and save them. For now, you don't have to open, you could if you wanted to. If you want to open one of these up and look at it, feel free. There are things that can be done in this, but we don't need that for today. Now our landscape is looking very plain right now, and it almost looks like it has no material applied to it whatsoever. But it does if we zoom way in, we're going to see our base layer texture. Okay. It's just tiling really, really badly, and it's obviously the wrong scale. Okay. So for instance, even if I enter play, you can see I can see the tiling even from the player's perspective. Okay. So I'm going to adjust that right now in our material. Okay. So let's go back to our material and change the tiling for the rock layer. And we can also maybe estimate some tiling settings for other layers. So go back to our landscape material, and we're going to go back to these landscape quartz nodes. So for our rock, we're going to set the mapping scale, let's say to something like 65. Now, before we can see this make a change on our landscape, okay, we have to hit apply, and it's going to think for a second. And now we have scaled that up. Now, it looks not great up close. Let me see, I'll show you from the player's point of view. But you'll see, as soon as we start playing with the height map, elevation, and mountains and stuff, if I make a mountain with this, then it's going to be a lot more realistic in appearance. And we can also just estimate some things for these other ones. So the grass, maybe I'll set the mapping scale to 10. I'm just guessing. The snow mapping scale, let's set that to 30. I'm guessing right now, just estimating. And the cobblestone, we'll set the mapping scale to maybe 4. Apply and save. Okay. So let's just look at a few things, and we already know what the rock is looking like. So let's just make a mountain. I'm going to take my brush size and just turn it all the way up, set the tool strength as high as it'll go. Excuse me, I'm in sculpt mode. I was in the wrong mode there. Brush size all the way up, and you can set the fall off depending on how rounded you want the tops to be. So I'm in, since I'm going to be testing the height map right now, I want to select the height map layer. Oh, that's the height map layer. I beg your pardon, not this base layer. I'm not going to use that. But if I make, that's a pretty, pretty tall mountain, okay, because my tool strength is set way high, okay. So let's set the tool strength to something more controllable, and that way I can just feather the mouse. Okay. So you see what I mean? If that had that previous mapping scale, that would not look like real geometry at all. It would just look like what this whole panel looked like at the beginning. So that was the effect of changing the mapping scale value on this node right here. Okay, so if I set that back, to some value that's too small, let's say I set it to a 1 and hit apply. You see? Okay, so that's what that does. So mapping scale, I think 65 looked pretty good. Apply and save. And we can always go back and tweak the mapping scale for any one of our layers, okay? So these mountains here are fine. Let's see what they look like in context. Oops, what happened there? I see what happened there. It appears that we have to go into our world partition and load our layers. So let's just highlight everything and let's unload all and then reload. Wait a second. What happened? Height map. Was something unloaded? Let's see, maybe the player start just isn't where I think it is. So, player start. Let me go back into select mode and look for it. Player start. Oh yeah, okay, so she's spawning, like I said, underneath the landscape because I painted a mountain right where the player start was. Okay, so let's get that player start someplace where the character can spawn safely. Okay, so let's bring this out and I'm going to snap it to the ground. I'm on a Windows machine, so I'll just press end and we'll play from there. Okay, so if I were running around the level, this is what that little mountain would look like. And I do mean little because we're going to be making much larger mountains than this. So let's get back into landscape mode because that was just a test. Okay, and we're going to bring this out. And let's go now to the grass layer and go to paint mode. Okay, we're in the grass layer and I want to just paint some grass temporarily just to see if I've got the mapping scale set well in our material. Okay, so let's turn down the brush size a little bit and I'll set the tool strength to 100%. And we'll just get in there and paint a little grass. Paint mode, tool strength. Oh, do I have, I've got the wrong paint layer selected. See, don't get mixed up, okay? The edit layers and the paint layers are separate things. So I'm in the grass edit layer, but I'm using the grass material layer, okay? So let's paint a little bit of grass. And we'll take a look closely at that. And I think that my estimate was fine. Okay, this is technically that moss texture that we had before. So let's undo that. And now let's go to our snow layer and select the snow material, paint a little snow. And I think the texture tiling is probably pretty good on that. And we won't know until we start painting tops of mountains with it. And remember, we can always go back and change the mapping scale in our material. That's why I have that tab still open. So I'll undo that. And now we'll go to the cobblestone layer. Did I make an edit layer for cobblestone? Height map, rock, grass, snow. I guess I need one more, create. And we'll rename this one cobblestone. Layer. I've been using layer, haven't I? So I'll say height map layer. And I'll just rename these. Height map layer. Help me stay more mentally organized so I don't mix up the paint layer with the edit layer. So I should probably even type edit layer just so that I can't make that mistake. So we'll rename snow layer. Probably best if this said cobblestone edit layer, snow edit layer, grass edit layer, height map. You get the idea. So we already looked at the snow. Let's go to the cobblestone edit layer and the cobblestone paint layer. And we'll see what our cobblestone is tiling like. Okay, now that is going to be for roads. Okay, and I think it's tiling just fine. So we'll undo that. Okay. And I'm going to go back into sculpt mode for a second because these mountains were just a test, okay? And I want to get rid of them, okay? So we're in sculpt mode. I'll just use the flatten tool. Oh, no, let's see. We want the height map layer. Okay, so yeah, let's get rid of all of that painting. Where's my brush? Okay. Hey, why aren't you going away? I might have done that accidentally in a different layer. I wonder if I did. You can make these mistakes. How about, okay, so some of the tools are working. It's very strange. Okay, I guess that feature will remain in our landscape. It doesn't really bother me, and I'll sculpt over that. Before I start really putting any topology in here. One little trick that developers use to make large landscapes look even bigger than they are is to use landscape backgrounds. And backgrounds are usually mesh files that are very low detail, low poly, but you're never going to get close enough to them to see them, or to resolve with your eyes that they are low resolution. So they look great in the background. And I have some that I want to use in this level. So we'll go back to my content folder, and let's go back into select mode for a moment. Okay, and open up our content directory, which I'm going to dock for the time being. And I want to get my landscape backgrounds surrounding this landscape plane. And these were marketplace assets as well. They're called the photorealistic backgrounds. Okay, and these are primarily meshes. Okay, you got the materials and textures and so forth that were used to make them, but gave some really low quality foliage if we wanted. And in each one of these folders, there are meshes for like mountainous regions that are for different seasons. So let's look in modular winter, and each one has a different mountain. Okay, let's see what this mountain looks like, for example. Okay, that's not bad. I think I'll use that one. We're going to take a performance hit when we bring in meshes unless nanite is enabled on them. So what I would recommend is that once this is in here, actually the easiest way to do it is to enable nanite while it's still in the content browser. So if I decide I want to use any of these, I can highlight them all, right click, and just enable nanite. Okay, and that way it's not going to slow down our frame rate. Just going to save those. Okay, so this process is going to take a second, so I'll press pause until it's finished, and I'll be right back. Okay, so that's done, and now we can use one or more of these as background in our scene. Okay, so these are large, and you want them to be, frankly, below the level of your landscape plane. So let's follow it down there. As I translate this down, just want to look at it relative to our landscape plane. Now, all of these background meshes can be rotated to suit your scene. Do I have two of them in there somehow? Oh, you know what I did? I think I had them all highlighted and I dragged all of them in. That's fine, actually, because I was planning on using one mesh for all of them, but hey, this is even better. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So let's take these and just set them aside for a moment, or actually just delete them from the scene. I prefer, honestly, working with just one or two at a time. Okay, so here's this one. I like the look of it, so let's get it over here and move this one out of the way for a sec. I'm going to scale this up so that it is gigantic. Okay, so let's set this to something like 100 and see what happens. Oh, I thought I was padlocked, excuse me. So let's go back to default, padlock. This might be too big. And of course, now it's way, way up there. So max out my camera speed. And the location, let's just select the actor, find the gizmo. Can't find the gizmo, and it's so big. Yeah, 100 is too big. So let's go 20. Okay, maybe that's going to be a little bit more easy to deal with. There's the gizmo. Okay, so let's figure out where we are. I think I see bits of my landscape sticking out there. So let's just get this out of the way and figure out kind of like what perspective. We're up in the fog now, so let's lower this even more. Get closer to it. So what orientation here? So we'll rotate. What looks good? Maybe that perspective looks pretty good. Okay. And now we'll finalize the placement for this relative to our landscape. 20 might even be too big. Let's try 10. Okay. Get it in there. We're still way up in the fog. So I want to see how big this is compared to our landscape. Up. It's not very big. Let's get closer. My z-axis isn't working correctly. And the mesh, where is it? Okay, it's very odd. Let me look at world partition and make sure that all of our cells are loaded. Oh, you know something? My mouse is starting to misbehave. Hope I'm not crashing. Well, we'll see in a second here. That one. That's the wrong actor. What happened to that landscape background? Mountain 1, Mountain 2. Let's find it. It's right here. Okay, so where is everything else? I must have spazzed out, and I'm going to just delete that out of the scene again. Go back to our landscape. Okay, so this one I can see. So let's bring this out. I'll go with my original plan. Okay, so it's sort of below the level of the landscape. And I do want to make it bigger. So let's keep the padlock on and make it big and far away. And we'll get a better rotation for this. Now, if I play, this also helps because I can see what that looks like off in the distance and whether or not I want to make it even more grandiose. Okay, so maybe I do. So let's get back up there and get it farther away still and scale it up even more. I'll do that in the details panel. And just make sure that it's underneath your landscape. Now, the nice thing about this is, I mean, I've got all these other ones that I could use, but now that I've got this one kind of set up, what I might do is just reuse it. And we can scale it differently and rotate it differently. And it's just going to be multiple instances of the same mesh. They blend together well also. So I'm going to hold down Alt-Shift so that when I drag that, I get a copy of it. And I'm going to rotate that. And let's say we'll bring it in to overlap like that. Maybe rotate it some more. And then we'll do this all around the landscape. Okay, so Option-Shift, drag, and then let go of Option-Shift once you've got the copy. And we'll rotate this much differently and change its location. And let's see how things are looking from the player's perspective here. Nice mountains in the distance. just looks like one more side is going to be necessary. So zoom way out. And I'll just use another one of these. But they could be just different combinations of these two, right? So it doesn't have to be one mesh, but it's interesting that even when using only one mesh, you can create enough variation. And I'll show you what I mean by that. Not just in terms of scale of overall size, but oops, trying to bring that in. Okay, not just in terms of overall size, but we can also scale them vertically and horizontally and deform them just like other meshes, right? So let's say I want these to be taller, for example. Let's go into select and scale mode, and we can make these mountains taller. Or shorter. This one looks too close, I think. Maybe it needs to be farther away. And we've got our little mountain feature right there. And right behind it, it looks like I've got maybe a spot that I missed. So let's just take, I don't know, we'll use a different asset there. How does it look the best? Okay, we'll scale that up. And get it out of the way. And again, it should be below the elevation of the landscape. And far away. These seams, if they are below the level of the landscape, you're never going to see them. But if it concerns you, you can blend them together and then just use the scaling tool here. And, you know, you can get them to blend together. You could even rotate this one however you want. Okay, so there's many things that you can do there. But I think we're covered, I think, from all angles now for the distance, okay? So now let's start painting and sculpting some of our own features. For some reason, I was not able to get rid of that, so I'm going to just retopologize that. We'll go back into landscape sculpt mode, and I'll make that one appear deliberate, okay? So let's go back into sculpt, and I'll use a lower tool strength and my brush size. I'll make that a little bit smaller, and I'm going to be editing the height map here. So let's paint a little bit more here. Just a little landscape feature. Okay. And I'm going to paint smaller mountains around the periphery, okay, here. And to do that quickly, I have my brush size all the way big and my tool strength. It doesn't need to be all the way up. But I want to find my sweet spot, okay? So how long do I have to hold this down in order to create the surface deformity that I'm looking for? So we're on the height map layer, we're in sculpt mode, and my tool strength, that might be fine. So what I'm doing now is not really holding down the mouse button. I'm more like just feathering the mouse, okay? And I want to just create things that look vaguely like mountains. This is not going to have very much detail at first. And we're going to add detail to these after we get their basic form. Okay? So you can probably hear that clicking in the background being picked up by my microphone, and all that is me feathering the mouse to create these deformities in the landscape to resemble mountains all around it. If I hold down Shift, I can also sculpt subtractively. So, like for example, if I wanted to put like a big hole in the ground, you could do subtractive sculpting like that. So let's build that back up again. What did I do there? Oh, I don't know. Visual artifact of some kind. That's okay. And, I'm not being terribly careful about this. Because frankly, making things that look like hills and mountains is not that hard, especially at this level. Okay. I'm not a landscape artist. I'm a sound person, a sound and music person. But I always think it's helpful to understand as much of the pipeline as possible, okay? Because very often this will inform things like your sound design and stuff, what things look like. And vice versa, what things sound like might inform the appearance that you want to give these things. Okay, so let's see if I can still see my background mountains over these. And I can't always, but the character is able to climb on some of these surfaces. And if they look out in the distance, they could probably see those. Now, at this point, if I feel like this is just too much displacement, oh, I'm sorry, I switched to wireframe mode by mistake. We can lower the landscape. We can raise up the background assets. In fact, why don't I do that? I'll zoom out here and we'll select all of the ones that are in use. We'll go back into select mode, excuse me. And I'm shift clicking so that I've got them all. And then I'll just translate them up and see if that helped. Yeah, except I can see a little seam, okay? Right there. I don't know if you can see that, okay? So I raised them up more than I should have, so let's bring them down, and what we'll do in order to allow the user to see them better is just scale them taller. And wider, perhaps. I've got all of them selected right now, I think. How about this one? And this one. Make them taller and wider. And this one just bigger and taller. And you could have, for example, here's another cool thing. Let's suppose that I've got this background asset that I've been working with. I can make a copy of that same asset, bring it back, and pull that up to just enlarge the scope of the field of view of the backgrounds. Okay, so I think that that's not bad. And when she traverses higher elevations, she'll get a glimpse of the snowy mountains that surround this whole fantasy environment. Okay, so this is a start. This is a start. All right, so now let's do some landscape painting. So I'll zoom way out. Oh, not landscape painting. I still want to work on the height map a little bit more. So these mountains just look a little too perfect. They look a little bit too rounded. So we'll go back into landscape mode. And again, I'm not an expert, so you can apply hydroerosion and erosion. If you know how erosion works, probably is the best way to do that. But one of my favorite cheap ways of getting realism is to use this noise tool. And let's zoom into one of our mountains here, or one of our deformations, just to test our tool strength and our brush size and stuff. I want to make my brush size small enough so that I can control it. And I think that the fall off, yeah, this is going to help me control this. So right now I'm going to use just some of these default settings, and you can see it's adding deformation, right? But that does not look quite as random as I'd like it to look. Let's set the noise scale to a higher value and see what that does. Okay. I'm hitting undo for those because I didn't like the look of that. Now let's set the noise scale to a much lower value. Ah, now we're getting some interesting deformation. So I'm going to set it even lower. So the noise scale, let's set that to 25, perhaps. And the tool strength seems okay because I'm able to just sort of feather the mouse. So I might reduce the tool strength just a tiny bit. Tool strength. So I don't spaz out as I'm doing this. All right, so I'm going to go in here and I'm just going to sort of feather the mouse again and add some complexity to this geometry just using noise. Because nature is unlikely to create mountains that are just perfectly rounded all the time. So being careful with this, trying not to overdo it or underdo it. Look at this from different angles. Usually a good idea. You could make an entire landscape just using the noise tool. In and of itself, just changing the noise scale and the tool strength and the brush size if you wanted to. I'm just using it here to add detail or apparent detail to this geometry. Okay. That might have been too much. Okay. This is looking pretty jagged, but not too bad. I could always do a smoothing pass over this. I'll show you the smooth tool in a second if anything looks too rough. I'm trying to avoid the lowlands, right? Because the character is going to be perhaps occupying that area, and we'll have roads and things of that nature. So I want the player to have places that she can travel. And really noisy topology makes impossible walking angles. So that's no fun. This is sort of like Bob Ross, like a Bob Ross painting, just sitting here making happy little mountains or angry mountains. Starting to look sort of believable. Kind of proud of myself here for not being a landscape artist. I can't take any credit for the noise tool. That did not look good. So yeah, that's too pointy. I don't like the points. We'll smooth those over later. Okay, so let me just get through some of the remainder of the noise here so that we can move on to something else. Okay. I like to also zoom out and make sure that I don't have anything that looks like unnatural angles in my geometry. No squared off corners like here, you know, just make sure that it looks like it blends into nature, not with sharp angles. Okay. Right. So let's say that this is going to be a walkable area, and there are going to be things over here as well, maybe a location. So what I think I'm going to do is flatten just this area. I'm going to flatten this area back here because I might want to put like a medieval castle or something up there. And there should be a way to get up there. So let's see. I'm not that familiar with the ramp tool, but that's a spline. And it probably, let me see, does it take a material? Let's select that. Yeah, I'm going to delete that out of the level because this, I'm going to reserve a layer for splines later for roads, and you'll see how I do that. So this I'm not going to use. So we'll go back to sculpting mode, and let me just smooth out some of this stuff here. And that way I'll be able to build a road that leads up this hill to the surface of where the building might be. As a matter of fact, let's even put a building there now. Why not? Let's go back into select mode. And we'll put like a little medieval house or whatever. I've got this medieval fantasy pack right here. So I'll go into houses. They actually have some blueprint houses, different variations. Let's look at these variations. Those are cool. They're all about equally cool in different ways. Okay, so we could build even like a little city here, but we're going to go, and there's different, the market square, the town. These are the houses. So we'll take one of these house blueprints. What I might want to do prior to this is enable nanite on all of the meshes that were used to construct all of this before I bring them in. So I hope these are nanite compatible, because if they're not, we're going to forget about the house. But I'm going to do a select all, right click, do that again. Select all, right click. Can I enable nanite on these? Or you know what? They might already be nanite meshes. Let me just open one of them. Look at it in the material editor. Oh no, that is a whole blueprint. I beg your pardon. I thought that these geometries were just, some of them are static meshes and some of them are blueprints. So I guess that first one was a blueprint. And I should be able to, I think, let's use the filter, okay? Look at only static meshes here, okay? That way I can avoid accidentally selecting something that is not a static mesh. Now I should be able to right click and enable nanite on these and save them. And I'm going to press pause to let it do its thing, and I'll be right back. Okay, that was a lot of naniting. Anyway, let's go back to houses here. Let's see, Mega Pack. Oh, it's still preparing the shaders. I'm sorry, I got to press pause one more time. It's not even done. So yeah, I'll be right back. It's still not done. Okay, after that false start, it was probably an additional 40 minutes have gone by in the meantime. So now everything is nanited and the shaders are redone. And even though it took a long time, it's worth it because these are super high quality assets. And when I bring, maybe any of those, where am I? Content browser. Oh, I still have my filter. Okay, so anyway, when I bring these assets into the scene, it's worth naniting them before you bring them in because they won't impact your performance not nearly as much as they would otherwise. So let's just, for a sense of scale, get back into that houses blueprints folder. And we'll just take something here from variation one, such as this house, and I'll just put it there. And I want to have a sense of scale here. And let me see, is that buried in the ground? Yeah, so let's just for a sense of scale. I'm going to delete this in just a second. But I want to also get my player start, which yeah, that was not good. Okay, so I want to bring our character up on this hill for scale and see if I want to scale the building differently, if it's actually big enough compared to a human. Why is that? Oh, it's still lower than I think. Oh, come up. Okay, end. End. Okay, so now we should play from up there. Here's a house. And does this feel about right? Yeah, she fits through it pretty well. Obviously, there's no lights in here. That's because we didn't put any lights in there. But yeah, so that's fine. Okay. Well, that I'm afraid was my C drive running out of space. Unfortunately, the screen recorder that I use writes files to my C drive for some reason. But in any case, now I'm in a race with running out of space. So let me delete this house for the time being, and we can go back into painting this landscape because that's really what the hell is that? That's a missing tile. That's a tile that's not loaded in world partition for some reason. So did we enable streaming? I don't remember. Yes, okay. And I want to look at my grids. So I'll search for preview grids. And you can see they're drawing in, but somehow this tile got deleted. Okay. So I don't know why that is. Let me see if going into play corrects that. And then I'll escape. Huh. I don't know what happened to that tile. Okay, well, Unreal Engine 5 is still, relatively young, and I'm assuming that some bug just took place. By the way, you can see how these grids, they graphically represent kind of what happens as actors are loaded in and out of memory. And that can help you optimize your game. You can, for example, by reducing the loading range, that means that I have to increase it a little bit here. That, if actors exist in other cells, they won't really necessarily come into view until you're close enough to that. So that's a matter of optimization. But if you want to see every actor out to its highest LOD, highest indexed LOD, you can have those grids encompassing the entire landscape, but that's going to be less performant. Okay, I thought I would just get that in. So let's get the grids off of there and go back into landscape paint mode. Landscape paint. And let's say up here, I want all this to be cobblestone. So let's go to our cobblestone edit layer, and I'm going to select my cobblestone paint material and zoom in, and I want my tool strength to be 100% because I think that if there's going to be a house up here, I don't want any, rock showing through. I want it to just be the cobblestone, right? So let me reduce my brush size and my fall off so that I basically have very precise control where this cobblestone is being placed, and also making sure that it's not like fading into the background. I just want it to be sharply delineated in this case, as if somebody came around and just paved the top of this. So let's do that. And we're going to be using the same cobblestone to make some roads later. That is, if I don't run out of, so yeah, I overdid it right there. So let's be more careful, okay? In any case, if I don't run out of disk space, okay? So I'll try to get that in if I can. So I think I'm being a little too fussy here. I better get on with it. So let's get most of this painted. And I think that, yeah, that mapping scale might be a little too small. So let's see what it's like. No, I think up close that looks pretty good. Okay, so we can imagine our roads being made out of it with this level of detail, and this mapping scale looks okay to me. All right, so I don't have a problem with that. And now let's do something else that's fun. Let's paint our mountaintops with some snowfall. It's bothering me that tile of the landscape disappeared. I might, if I rebuild the landscape, it might fix that. So we're going to go into the snow layer and right there, and make sure we have our snow materials selected. And I'm going to just paint snow, I guess, wherever I think there ought to be snow. I think it should have a certain kind of slopey fall off to it. And let me see, my brush size is too small. I want to get a lot of this done quickly. Okay. And my tool strength, right now, you can see it's fully white where that material is applied. So I clicked twice. Let me undo. Okay. I can also reduce the tool strength so that more of the underlying material shows through. So that's kind of a creative choice on your part. I'll make it 100% snow in my case. And we'll just go along here. And wherever the snow makes things look better, I don't think we can see over that anyway. Sometimes I think it's better to look at this from a distance and up close. And there's just nothing to paint on there. It's so odd. The disappearing landscape tile. Okay, so that happened. Nothing I can do about it right now. Okay, could I be a lot more careful? Yes, but remember, I'm in a race with a dying hard drive, so I've got to get this painted rather quickly. I'd be considering things like, maybe more snow higher, or having little strips of it seep into our landscape a little bit. Why not? And messing with the tool strength so it can be varied in different areas. What happened to that tile? I'm going to try something here. If this takes a long time, I'll pause it, but we're going to build our landscape again. And a collision with 0 radius. Please delete the post-process volume. Can I even... if I go into select mode, okay, is it gonna let me delete it? Okay. Yeah, still we have a missing tile. All right, I don't know why. She swallowed a fly. Okay, the lowlands that can be walked upon, let's paint those with the grassy material. So we're going to go into landscape mode again, and we'll go into our grass layer, get our grass material, and now we'll paint the grass into the lowlands. Now, that is definitely shocking, to say the least. But we're going to have some foliage on top of this. I don't think I like the strength, the tool strength, to be that high. So let's see. I definitely want it to be stronger than the rock. Okay. But let's go back into the grass tiling and set that to 30. Apply and save. Okay, yeah, that's got more of a texture to it now. Okay, so let's paint some grass. And the lighting is going to make a difference as well to how this grass is. And there will be foliage on top of it anyway. So let's go ahead. And we can also reduce the alpha of this layer after the fact, even after we paint it. Okay. So right now I'm just plotting that in wherever I think there should be grass. And accidentally got some, I'm shift clicking to erase the grass that I didn't mean to paint on top of this geometry here. I don't mind if a little bit of rock shows through once in a while. You know, it's not the worst thing ever. Okay. Okay, so even in the mountains, you know, maybe there are some mountainous regions I can reduce my brush size by a lot, and just suggest that, you know, maybe a little bit of grass, probably more likely to grow on a certain side. You know what I mean? But that can also add a little bit of interest to, you know, the mountains that you've made. And in our lowlands, you know, if I want to make little hills that have a little bit of snow on them, like over here, not snow, that's the wrong material, that's grass. Put some snow on that in the snow layer. I just painted all that grass, by the way, in the snow layer. That was a big mistake, but I'm not going to go back and fix that right now. Always just try to make that match. Okay, so now we can paint a little road that leads from where that house would have been. And that can still be made of cobblestone. So for now, there are ways that you can do this with splines, but I'm worried that we might run out of time. So let's set the tool strength 100% strong, and we'll go to the cobblestone layer, paint layer, and the cobblestone edit layer. And we'll continue this cobblestone almost like a road. This is going to be very crude for now. Normally, I would just make a road spline for this, and oop, what happened there? Okay. It's not letting me erase it. I'll just have to paint some grass over that again. See what I mean? Okay, so that this layer is locked. Okay, so unlock. Yeah, whatever mistake I just made. Okay, so let's say there's going to be a little diversion right here, maybe like a little well, little happy mistake. Okay, but let's continue making this road that leads to some other location. And maybe over here, there's going to be some kind of area of interest. Okay. So now, I think I should be able to plop that house up there. That wasn't really a problem, especially now that the cobblestone is there. Whoa, outer space. So let's get back to someplace where I know where I am. Okay, and we'll hit play, and we'll spawn our character. And there's their house. Okay, now the house, remember, is kind of like stuck in the ground there. So let's press stop and get back into select mode, beg your pardon, and fix that. Okay, and I'll snap that. Weird point of origin. I'll do it by sight. And so if it clips a little bit, I don't care that much. Okay, so home sweet home. And if I were working on this with a spline, I could make the entry point for that, or I could put like some torches there where the climb down begins. And let's see what this is starting to feel like. Let me see. The long and winding road. Oh, that's pretty steep. That's pretty steep. Is it less steep over here? Yeah. Woo! Hell yeah, that's actually kind of fun. But I've got my cobblestone. And knowing that it's there sort of will inform how I want to how I may or may not want to further deform the landscape around this before I start adding things like foliage. You can make using that same noise tool that I use to add detail to these mountains. You can like use it in such a way that the noise scale is bigger and the tool strength is lower, so that even the flat parts of the height map have a little bit of height variation. And I do like that, I have to admit. So I'm going to try to do that really, really quickly here. So landscape, sculpt. We're still going to use noise. And let me just use a larger brush. Okay. And the noise scale can be large. Let me just see. Okay. That's pretty large. And therefore the tool strength can be fairly low. And I'm just going to go over the topology here just randomly, okay, so that it's not perfectly level ground. That's all. So this is adding just a little bit of natural deformity, elevation, irregularity, okay? And the places where I hold my mouse down for longer, you can see it is building up and subtracting from the landscape. You can do it additively, subtractively, or both. So this is set to both, and therefore should give us some fairly natural seeming variation. Trying to do this quickly. And that can be on your road as well, okay? After all, it's sort of built into the earth. It's one with the earth. Okay, next. We're going to paint some foliage onto here. So let's go into foliage mode. And currently, foliage, unfortunately, is not ready for prime time with regard to nanite for the most part. But there is this one asset pack called Nanite Foliage that I found on the marketplace that is maybe not the best foliage that I have, but at least it works with nanite and it is therefore highly performant. So if we get into here and we look at the meshes, you'll see, oh, there are some rocks and things. But right now I'm interested in painting like grass, okay? So let's take some of this stuff. Let's take this. Let's take this and this. I'm holding down command click so that I can get more than one of these at a time. I don't necessarily need them all, but 1, 2, 3, 4. Maybe even this is too many grass types. Maybe I don't need Maybe I don't need, no, 5 is okay. So anyway, after you decide which ones you want, you can highlight them and just drag them into this space. And it says choose location for foliage type asset. I just let it make the foliage types right in the same directory. So we'll save them. Save, 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 because there are 5 of them. Okay. Now, we can limit what this will paint on and set up exclusion layers, but I know that I already made mistakes where I painted the wrong thing in the wrong layer. So that screwed that up. I'm just going to have to be careful. So in order to paint this foliage, you can highlight the ones that you want to include and make sure that they are checked. If I were to option click, I can uncheck or check them all, or just decide which ones I want on an individual basis, like turning that one on and turning that one on, but not that one. Okay. So, but we'll paint all the grass types for now. So let's get them all and make sure that they're all turned on like that. Now let me have a look at my brush. Okay, so I think this brush should have, let's see, might be a little bit precise here. Paint density, erase density. Okay, I'm going to go to the manage section of this. You have to have these highlighted here, and I'm going to determine the density. The density I'm going to be setting quite low, okay? Because otherwise, every time I do this, it's going to really put a lot of my chosen, you can see the LODs coming in and out, very densely populated there. And the more instances that there are, of course, the harder the computer has to work to render all that stuff. So let's set the density something like 25 and see what that looks like. And set a radius for it, let's say of 5. And that determines how close they can be from one another. Okay. So let's try it with a density of 1, a radius of 1. Let's see, let's make this 50. Okay, so maybe 50 is good. Okay, and we'll have to play the game to see, but I'll undo all that painting. Right now, because I'm working at more of a micro level, I've got to slow my camera down again because everything was moving. Well, that's still a little slow for my speed. Okay, so 4 I think will work fine for grass. So we would paint the areas that there should be grass, okay? And you can see that this is just randomly painting that grass on there. So let me undo all that for a second and show you also that you can give even more random appearance to this by using the scaling here. So with those highlighted, let's see, where can I go to? Okay, first of all, align to normal. You should leave that on for grass, but not for trees, because trees usually want to grow straight up. And if you leave align to normal on, it'll alter the leaning, so to speak, of the foliage. So I want to say where am I? There's the density, scaling. We'll say free scaling, and we want these to be all the same. Otherwise, because we don't want them getting fatter and skinnier, okay? So let's say we'll go from 0.5 for all of these, X, Y, and Z, 0.5, 0.5. I guess the previous one didn't go in, 0.5. There we go. Up to, let's say, 1.5. So that they are symmetrical. Actually, no, if I say uniform, that makes more sense, okay? So no, that is fine. That way, the way that I was doing it was the long way. I just realized that that's what the uniform mode is for. And now they'll have some height variation every time I paint them in. And that's kind of nice. That's more like nature too. Okay, so we'll zoom out and we'll try to get some foliage painted in here. And because of the way that they've got the LODs applied very aggressively here, I'm just going to have to take my own word for it, I guess, that what I should have done is made sure that I didn't screw up my edit layer systems, because I could choose to apply this to the entire grass edit layer and have it automatically populate for me. So right now I'm just going to paint it in very sloppily. And yes, I know what you're thinking. If you're an advanced user, you're thinking, boy, that road should be a spline. And hey, I agree with you. I am just racing against a hard drive that I know is going to die on me before I get a chance to show that. So I can no longer afford the time to be careful. So I'm even overlapping my cobblestone every now and then, which is not the worst thing in the world. If you want there to be a little bit of a fade there, I can always make my brush size really small and just have like little tufts of grass. Oops. Little tufts of grass appearing, through the cracks, like on my back patio. I can't control the weeds. Okay. But I wouldn't overdo that. So where are we playing from? We're playing from up here. And therefore, I want to find that area and at least get some grass and stuff around that, especially when she enters this area so that she can see it. As we start to enter the world from our spawn location and it starts to come alive with vegetation. Okay. Now, this is not a material that I'm applying here. This is a foliage type. Looks like painting a material, but it's not. I'm actually painting multiple instances, many thousands of instances of all these little meshes. Okay, so when we play, we're probably going to be able to see those. And you can see that the density doesn't have to be all the way cranked if you're using a landscape material underneath that has about the right color, and I can always go change the texture sample in the material if I don't feel this is the right color. So I could finish this entire landscape, I suppose. Let's make the brush size big. And it's about as way too big. Hold on a second. And try to get as much grass around here as I can, very haphazardly. And it really should be wherever the grass ought to be, wherever we painted that material, okay? And too big. Okay, so let's see what that's like for us when we play. This is looking nice. Home sweet home. There should actually, that house is so small, there should be like more houses. Should be like a condominium complex or something. So I don't want her to die, so I'm not going to just jump off the side. I'm going to walk where it looks like it might be relatively safe. Maybe she'll... Okay. Well, my hard drive ran out of room again, so I got to wrap this up pretty quickly, I guess. So she eventually did make it down the sidewalk, and everything's the little cobblestone trail, and everything seems okay. Are we in the proximity of that missing tile? I don't know. But I thought I'd show you some trees. Okay, we'll populate some of this areas with this area with some trees, and adjust the lighting, and then you'll know that you can continue developing the rest of this landscape on your own. creating whatever gameplay elements you need wherever. But you'll see this is going to come together pretty quickly. I've got some foliage. Let's first of all disable the grass. So we'll option click all those. And I've got an asset pack here that has, oh, there's a blueprint in there. They're blueprints. Well, I don't think I want to paint blueprint actors. Uh-oh. 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 Unreal just froze. Hopefully it's just thinking, as is often the case. Pause the video. Hold on. Okay. I'm taking no chances, okay? The disk had spun down. Anyway, so let's go into the meshes folder, and we don't have to use every kind of tree, but we can use just the selection of what we think looks interesting. So I think that looks interesting, and I'll hold down Control, and maybe that, maybe some of these, okay? And we'll do the same thing as we did before. We'll drag them in there. We'll hit save for each type. And there they are. They're already highlighted and ready for, they're not highlighted, excuse me, they're checked and ready for use. But I'd like to highlight all of them and set some settings down here. Random yaw is helpful. Align to normal in this case should be turned off because the trees we want growing straight up. We don't want them sticking out diagonally, if we paint them in a certain location. And then the density, let's make it pretty low. How about 10 and 5? Let's try that. And we'll just do a cluster of trees right here as a test. Okay. Now that still, to me, looks pretty dense. So undo. So let's take our density and set it to 1. Okay, that looks better. And the, like I said before, the radius sort of determines how close to each other they can be painted. Now, in this case, these are not nanite enabled yet. And foliage is one of those things that can really bring a system to its knees. So you can get into foliage culling and play with the cull distance down here. But that's that phenomenon that when you play an open world video game where, trees, they pop into view as you're walking. And that's foliage culling. And that's another optimization thing. So, anywhere that the trees could possibly be growing, I'm just going to paint them in there. I'm not trying that hard right now because we are in a race against time. But let's let our hero enjoy some trees. Right around this area. These are Megascans trees, by the way, and they come with systems that let weather control them and with different seasons down to the level of individual leaves. And they will animate, with wind systems, and it even comes with sort of a wind system of its own. You know what I didn't do is I don't think I set, did I set a min and max? Oh, darn it, I didn't. You know what I could do is I could select all of these and I can remove them. Remove the instances. And let's get those foliage types back in here again. Those trees. It was, oh, did I only have one highlighted? Actually, here's save. Save. Okay. So that's foliage. That's foliage. thought I made more. One, two. Oh, right here. Okay, and we'll drag those in as well. All right, so everybody who is a tree, we'll just use those three for now. We'll highlight. Sorry about this. I forgot to do this. So the density, it seemed to remember. That's good. And the align to normal being off is good. But let's have uniform scaling again from, let's say, 0.75, maybe all the way up to really big trees, like 3 times the size of the default models, and see what that looks like. Way better. Okay, way better. So let's increase our camera speed once again so I can cover more of the map quickly. All right, and anywhere there could be trees, I might decide I want to paint some trees. Happy little trees like a Bob Ross painting. Trying to avoid the road a little bit, right? Because they're going to be walking that path. Okay. Really trying to get this in quickly so we can just experience the environment that we created at least one time before my computer crashes again. And I also want to change the lighting. I guess there could be trees growing around in the lowlands of the mountains. This is kind of a foresty area. Okay, and let's go way down here for a second to where the player is going to be spending a lot of time, like walking on roads. And you can see that the lighting is, and where am I? I'm underneath. Got to get to someplace good. Someplace where there's a road. Where we're going, we don't need roads. Control L. Let's just steer that lighting, okay? And wait a second, I'm in foliage mode. Let's get out of foliage mode so I don't accidentally paint something. Control L. And let's figure out how we want this scene essentially lit. Can be really any time of day or night. Takes it a second for the lumen reflections to propagate. Let's see, do we have a visible sun direction? Let's see if we can see it from the player start. But that gave a nice little new tint, a new feel for this. All right, so having done all that and worrying about running out of time, let's just try to experience this environment in its full glory. We're going to change the play settings to new editor window and maximized. So we can appreciate our work. Home sweet home. Vast open land. Really good looking trees. And you'll see that when we get into the playable area, with as little effort as we put into this today, we're going to have an experience that is going to seem rather nice and rather video game-like. We can also set up systems that allow, speaking of being mainly, into sound design for video games, detection systems so that the character, as it moves about, it can detect the surface type underneath it, so that when we're playing the game and listening to the footstep sounds, the Foley sounds, and the player is walking on cobblestone, that plays a certain footfall type of sound effect. But if they wander off into a path like this, now it sounds like they're walking on this stuff, okay, foliage and grass, and it will switch back. And in this case, we would have footfalls for cobblestone, for rock, for foliage, and for snow. Let's say there was something with a pile of snow on it, and I decide I want to go over here. Now it's switching into like the foliage footsteps. And as we climb up this hill, we can make a transition into the footstep sounds that sound like they're stepping on snow. And there are even ways to leave footprints if you wanted to. So I'm pretty pleased with how this is looking at the moment. And of course, we've overdone and underdone certain things. And if I hit escape, I could even do something like going into starter content, audio. Of course, you'd make your own audio for this, but we'll use the starter background cue. The starter background cue, which has some bird song in it and maybe some of the starter music, and see what that does. Oh, I just realized that there's sound coming out of my computer. There's sound coming out of my computer speakers. I should not be. I hope my microphone's working. Okay, cancel. So let's try that again. I wonder if this is a setting in the Camtasia recorder. Give me just a moment. I'm going to stop recording and just check the setting. Okay, I think everything is okay. Yeah, something got screwed up with my sound settings on my computer, but in any case, this should sound okay. So I'm going to turn the music down some, though. So there's the volume multiplier. Let's set it to 0.6, just so we can hear the birds a little bit more. Yeah, I don't know if you're hearing distorted audio right now. My audio interface seems to be on the fritz at the moment. And of course, this could be enhanced further with the post-process volume. Let's see, and let's make this infinite extent unbound, which is what we'd want, okay? And if you're so inclined and you want to use, any of the, advanced color correction and all of that stuff, it's really one of the best places to do it is in this post-process volume. For example, the scene does look a little overexposed to me. So let's see if we can, let's see, exposure. Why are these all ghosted? Is it because I'm in the wrong mode? Or is it just because I don't know what I'm doing? That could also be the case. But in any case, usually this is editable. Maybe I have the wrong post-process volume, but I'm not seeing any details for that one, probably because it's not loaded. These were the ones that I couldn't delete before. So let's see. Let's bring this over here. And I'm wondering if that's making any difference to our ability to edit these or not. Okay, for some reason, I'm not able to edit that one. But I suppose we could just add our own, right? Post-process volume. Ooh, crap! That's not. I missed. Forgive me. Let's see, post-process volume, place actors. Where am I? Place actors. Volumes, post-process volume. I'll put one right here. This is an area of interest anyway. So, but I can have it infinite extent, I suppose. And I can set its priority to a higher number. That way it'll take precedence over all of the other ones. But can I set anything here? Yeah, good. All right, so let me just make sure that it is infinite. Yep, we did that already. And priority, I'll just set it to 1. And that way, if it'll override the other post-process volumes that are in our world. Okay, so now let's clear our search and correct the exposure. Oh dear. Okay. Little overexposed for the time of day that I was going for. All right. And we can play with the color. This is usually, by the way, where I get into trouble because I'm very badly colorblind. And yeah, I always like to put some lens flares for the times that you can actually see the sun. Let me see. Let's get the sun someplace where it can actually be seen. Right there. Okay. And now we can determine our special effects a little bit better with that. So I'm back in my, it was this post-process volume, I think. Which one was it? Maybe this one? Which one am I able to edit? That'll tell me. I should have named it at the time. So it's this one. Okay, so let's find, there's our exposure. Our lens flare, I think I got a little bit too aggressive with. A little bit too aggressive. Okay, and let's see, I can tint that, you know, whatever kind of color I think is befitting. And I just do that because it's pretty. And I know it's probably wrong, but then again, I don't care. I'm colorblind. This is a fantasy environment. There's depth of field stuff, and I can alter the overall, you know, color temperature using different methods. That's good for creating like weird alien atmospheres, things of that nature. You can find these features in most color grading types of software. I usually oversaturate things, but you know, that's again because I want to see more color and I'm so darn colorblind. And I like a lot of contrast, so I'm going to turn up the gain on the contrast. And you can do this in the different color channels if you want to. Technically, I don't know what gamma is, but I usually like to play with it and just choose what I think looks good. And I don't know what this gain control is for. The gain of what? Maybe just the global light. Shadows, midtones. I mean, you've got control over everything, including the kind of camera lens and film back and aperture and, you know, shutter speed and all that sort of stuff. Okay. So, reflections, lumen, and, yeah, I suppose that I could keep going. But I know that I'll also end up making this look like a weird space scene if I'm not careful. I hope that sound isn't distorted on your end. Whoa, not safe. So one more little tour around our magical kingdom. If there were time, I'd put some animals and stuff in there. Maybe give her footstep sounds. If anybody wants that, I'll save this and we can do a sound design uh, like at one of those sound design workshops, just using this level. And we can have like little destinations where we can talk to other characters or maybe sit around a campfire, hear the sound coming from that. The birds can be more specific in terms of where they're coming from. Right now, these are just in stereo. Tell that when I pan the camera or the character moves in different directions, the birds aren't rotating. But we can do better than that if we want to. And we can also set up a detection of the surface type underneath the player so that the footstep sounds will change. Let's walk around a little bit more and see what's fun to look at. You can see my frame rate is tanking a little bit. That's because of these Megascans trees and not really doing foliage culling, excuse me, which I probably should have done. So I think that we've got a rather lovely job done here, okay, with our open world landscape. I'm going to take a screenshot of this. So let's go to our cinematic viewport, which shows everything in high resolution. Let's back out a little bit. This will be a great thumbnail, I think. And we'll go ahead and take a high resolution screenshot, capture, and if we click this fast enough, it'll take us to the directory where it was saved, okay? And I'll make something out of this, and I'll also do like a normal aspect ratio one, just by making sure, let me just minimize that we go out of the cinematic viewport to the default viewport. And we'll take another shot that is going to be probably a more shareable aspect ratio. I want to get some trees in there and some good looking stuff that we sculpted. Or maybe, let's see, where am I? Helps to know where I am. Should we do a shot from the house? Do you think that that would look cool? Oh, I think I know what would look cool is if we get a shot with the character in the scene. That would look cool. So let's see. Where is that road? See, can I get a good angle from here? Let's see, go down. The trees are pretty dense. Yeah, and we're not going to see the mountains. But in any case, this is nicely framed, I think. And let me just make sure this is the default viewport. Yep, and we'll do another high resolution screenshot. And then I'll bring this into some kind of graphic software and put titles on it. Okay, so there's that one, and then there's this one. Boy, is that gorgeous. Look at that. Love it. Okay, well, thank you for joining me once again. This is Ben Blau, and this has been another episode of Unreal Engine 5 Study Hall. Sorry for all the crashes, but hey, that's just how it goes. And I look forward to being with you again sometime soon. Take care now. Bye-bye.